I'm Jeff from Sketchbook Comics in St. Catharines. This is obviously John McCrea from
Hey, how's it going, guys?
numerous things. I tend to keep these things pretty easygoing. It's not a huge crowd, so any questions you've got? No, it's never a huge crowd.
All right, okay.
So yeah, any questions you've got, just we'll have a conversation. Yeah. I will say
I'm pretty easygoing. I won't bite either. No.
I will say the only thing we can't talk about is Dead Rabbit.
Yes, so, that's off the cards. Yeah.
Hitman. And
anything else?
Anything else?
Fire away.
I'm very interested in your work with the boys,
and
I'm very curious as to the process itself. Like, when you do you get the script from say Garth, and then you get to kind of look at what it is, and you're going to decide, okay, this is what I'm going to draw, or do you guys have a meeting and decide? Basically, for Herogasm,
kids in the room.
Like when you.
His dad just read it too, though.
Yeah.
Oh right, okay, fair enough.
So I'm like. Yeah, like there was a...
how much input did I have into some of the input that was in it? I know what you're saying. Quite a lot. At the start, when I was drawing it, there were a few things I drew, and Garth emailed me and just went, no, go more extreme. Show more, show everything. And I was like, really? Good Lord. So... I sort of did amp it up a little bit. The sequence that happened down in that basement area that they went to, where even more ridiculous stuff was going on. There was a particular.
I love the code that he's talking in for you.
Yeah, I know. I'm so sorry. And there was a particular instant where it was a missed opportunity, I thought, where afterwards I thought, oh no, there was a sequence where there was a lady and a dog together, sort of being intimate, shall we say, and I didn't make the dog crypto. I forgot I didn't put a little cape on him, and I was like, oh, what a lost opportunity. I should have put a little cape on him and it would have been very obvious, coloured him, the colorist would have coloured him not white and made him like a brown dog or something, so so we'd get away with it. But I thought, there's a moment like that where you go, I should have done that. And so I've got a certain amount of input into these things, And
you said you emailed back and forth, so...
Sure.
Did you kind of know what you're getting into with him with that
series? No, not at all, actually. No. I mean, I've worked with Garth a lot.
Right.
So, and, I've worked on Dix with Garth. So, Dix is quite the thing.
Yeah.
And in fact, Garth and Steve had a conversation. Steve Dillon and Garth were looking through the latest issue of Dix that I'd drawn one time. And Steve sort of turned to Garth and said, John really likes to draw dicks, like lots of willies, doesn't he? He really likes drawing willies. And Garth was like, I don't know what's going on there, really, because I didn't ask for any of these. He just keeps putting them in. And then Garth sort of said to me, what is that? And I said, they're hilarious. Just willies are hilarious. They're just funny looking things, I mean, they're just ridiculous, if you'll pardon the pun there. So I know what I'm getting into with Garth, but for Herogasm, because it was ostensibly a superhero comic, I suppose, I hadn't realised quite how extreme it was going to be until I started getting the scripts through, and then I hadn't realised how extreme Garth really wanted to push it as well. Though I mean, I had read the first trade, I guess, so I knew I should have known. But Garth really did seem to want to push the boat out with that one. So he did.
Herogasm really was where it leveled up.
I was like, whoa. Some of this stuff is pretty extreme. So it's. I mean, I think I did about a fifth of all the episodes of The Boys. I drew about a fifth of them, and there was always something fairly extreme going on somewhere or other. It's Garth. It's what he does. It's his thing. So,
speaking of Garth, like you said, you've done a ton of work with him.
Sure.
How did you get connected with him?
Well, Garth and I went to school together. He was in my brother's year, 2 years below me at school, and he knew that he knew that I drew comics or wanted to draw comics. And Garth read comics a little. He read all the war comics. He didn't read any superhero stuff or anything like that. He wasn't interested in that bag. But I read the war comics too because I just read all comics.
Right.
Anything I could lay my hands on, I read. So he knew of me. We weren't pals because he was a couple of years below me, and my brother knew him a bit. But then I opened a comic shop in Belfast. Northern Ireland's first comic shop, and Garth was one of my customers. He would come in and buy Concrete and Cerebus off me. Those were his 2 comics, and he picked those up. And I was starting to get a little bit of work through with British Marvel. I'd done a couple of G.I. Joe stories, Snake Eyes story, and a Storm Shadow story. Done 2 of those for British Marvel, and then I'd done a Future Shock for 2000. So I was starting to get some stuff, and everybody who came into my shop knew that I was a comic artist and was starting to get comic art. And everybody who came in would go, "I've got an idea for a story," and be like, "Oh yeah, right, okay, fair enough. What is that then?" And Garth came in one day and he said, there was a 2000 AD had put out this sister magazine called Crisis, which was a sort of a politically aware comic about third world debt, environmental issues, all this sort of business. Very wanting to be, but with action stories. But it was very heavy-handed, very sort of hitting you over the head with the message. And I think they had forgotten that it's story first, message second, so that you can't go message without a decent story behind it. And so the sales had been dropping off, and there'd been the editors had put out word that they wanted new story ideas. And Garth came into my shop one day and he said, what we should do is do a story about the Troubles in Northern Ireland for them. They'd be real, it's right up their alley. 2 guys from Northern Ireland writing and drawing a story about the Troubles in Northern Ireland. It's a surefire winner. They'd love it. And I was like, yeah, sure, sign me up. So, and I didn't really expect it to happen, because Garth he'd never had anything published, but it was exactly what they were looking for. So the next thing I knew, we were flown over to London, and Garth and I sat down with the editors, and they had a bet going that Garth couldn't deliver. They kind of knew me because I'd done a Future Shock, but they had a bet going that Garth wasn't going to be able to deliver because it's so rare that you get a synopsis drop in your lap that just hits all the money and you just go, yeah, well, God, this would be perfect. And that doesn't happen very often. So they had bets going that Garth wouldn't be able to actually write it and deliver dialogue and a story that was matched up to what he did. And Garth came in and he talked with them about it, and they were like, yeah, this is great. This is what we want. So they said to me, can you paint? Fully painted comics was the thing in British comics at that time, and I had never painted in my life. Because I didn't want to paint. All I wanted to do was draw American comics, draw Spider-Man, and that's all pen and ink. Yeah. So I just had no interest in painting. I'd never painted in my life, never picked up a paintbrush, never painted with anything. And they said, can you paint 90 pages of full-colour artwork? And I looked at them and just lied my ass off and just went, yes I can. That'll be no problem at all. And went home and just had to learn how to paint in public, with my stuff being published as I was trying to figure out how the hell to use this stuff. So it was kind of terrifying, but I learned fast, I suppose. I had to learn fast, and by the end of Troubled Souls I was almost an okay painter by the end of it, but I never enjoyed it. I never enjoyed the process of painting. It's always like pulling teeth for me, and so I painted about maybe 200-300 pages of artwork for various comic companies, and then by the time I started getting work for DC with Garth, and he broke into DC, I was like, that's it, I'm done. Never want to see paint another thing ever again, because I'm so sick of it. And I don't think painted work really sits right in comics, interior stuff. It's okay in covers because it's just an image, and that's fine. But I find that painted stuff sort of slows down the story. It kind of gets in the way because people get involved in looking at how clever the painting is, you know, and like how cool that is. And I think it sometimes muddies up storytelling as well. And also, speech balloons just look weird sitting on top of fully painted artwork. So it's kind of jarring, and it kind of slows down the process. There's very few people who can get away with it. You know, Bill Sienkiewicz and maybe John J. Muth, or those sort of guys, Kent Williams, those sort of guys. And I was looking at a lot of those guys' stuff, you know, sort of going, how the hell do they do this? And trying to copy. So there's a lot of panels here and there throughout Troubled Souls where you can sort of see me sort of going, I'll try Bill Sienkiewicz in this panel and see if that works, and, you know, making a complete hash of it. But yeah, I did about 300 pages of that and then moved over to black and white, thank God. And that was that. But yeah, that's how I knew Garth, because of my comic shop.
Nice.
Which, so that was cool.
Did you just get rid of the shop once you?
No. It was me. A friend of me had started it up together, and I had always said to him, you know, this isn't full time for me. I'm going to break into comics.
Right.
So, you know, when that happens, the shop's all yours. You know, I'll just be gone because, you know, I won't have time. I was very arrogant and kind of knew, but I was so laser beam focused.
Confidence.
Well, yeah, you know, it was a confidence built of arrogance, built on, like, it was built on very loose ground, really, quite frankly, because I wasn't good enough. But I did manage to scrape in, because, you know, back then it was easier, it was both harder and easier to break into comics, because if you were a Brit, you know, working for the States, there was only America and the UK. Nobody else could really work because you had to FedEx stuff, and so it took too long from anywhere else.
Right.
And maybe there wasn't FedEx in certain places at that time, so you couldn't really work there anywhere else really. So I was only competing against all of America and the UK, whereas now you're competing against the entire world.
Right.
And I think the standard of comic art now is, you know, for the most part, really, there's some fantastic artists out there. I look at
it coming up from South America and stuff now.
South America, those sort of Eastern European guys like Isad Ribic and all those guys. I mean, Jesus wept, those guys are unbelievably good, and just, you know, everywhere. They mean European. In Europe, they still teach art. You know, like art. In the UK, you go to art school and they're like, they don't teach you how to draw or give you the basics of it. They just let you express yourself, and you can't really do that unless you've got an actual basis, something solid to build it on, you know, and then you can play around. But they don't do that at art. So not a lot. I mean, I went to art college for 2 months. I got accepted in, and they looked at my portfolio, and had a lot of comic stuff in it and some other stuff too, but a lot of comic stuff. And they looked at it and went, what, did you like draw this out of your head? And you know, and I was like, yeah. And they said, that's really interesting. You won't be doing any of that at our art college. And because, you know, this was back in the 80s and people didn't respect comics at all. So I sort of went, oh, right, okay. I don't think that sounds very progressive of you, or sort of, and I got accepted onto the course, went in, and it was absolute horse shit. And I lasted 2 months and then just went, you know, I'm out of here. This is crap. You're not teaching me anything. I'm not interested in anything you're trying to tell me. I know what I want to do, so I'm gone. And I just walked out in the middle of one lesson one time. It was just like they were just going on about something, and I sort of stood up and just said that, just like, you know, I'm gone. Bye. See ya. I won't be back. And just screwed off out the door and just went off. And basically, from when I left to when my course would have ended, like just as the course was ending, I got my first job in comics. Wow. So I figured I had spent my time better doing what I did, you know, on my own.
Yeah, sure seems like it.
Yeah. I think. I mean, and of all the people I've remained in contact with at that art college, I think one of them has a job in art. You know, nobody else got any art jobs at all, and they're all working in banks or what have you. You know, and it's tough. Yeah. Being an artist it's hard to break in and make a living out of. There's very few who do, I suppose. You know, especially in the UK. I think there was some sort of The Guardian or something did an article about how many people actually make a full-time living out of drawing, and of all the people who draw, and like about 5% of them actually make a full-time living out of it. Most people have to have a real job to kind of supplement their artwork, so I feel really lucky that my full-time living comes from art alone. So yeah.
Go ahead.
Just to mention on that too, like I have a good friend who went to art school,
Mm-hmm.
and he loved comic books and he wanted to do comic books, and he went to art school and graphic design and whatnot, and now he's designing coupons and flyers. So
Yeah.
I mean, it pays the bills, it pays fairly well, but he's not doing what he wanted to. But
Sure. Yeah, unless you go to the Kubert School or something, or maybe there's few places that will actually do comic, because there are a couple of comic courses now in universities and colleges, and I do a lot of talks and things, go to schools and colleges and do talks about my work, and I get invited to quite a lot of places, so obviously things have changed. I think the movies have sort of changed the playing field, where people look at it and go, well, comics are obviously valid because movies, so
Half the television.
I know, on TV. It's like, what's that?
because of money.
Sure, yeah, and everybody knows now. I mean, I was sitting in the airport waiting to get on a flight, and there were two guys, and they were discussing something, and they used Spider-Man as an analogy for it, and I was just like, shit, yeah, it's just absolutely sunk into everybody's psyche now. I went to go see Avengers Endgame, and there were two young teenage girls arguing about who was better, Thor or Iron Man, and I'm just like, well, where were you when I needed a girlfriend? when I was a teenager and needed a girlfriend, where the hell were you then? You didn't care about comics and Tony Stark then. Screw you.
The question I did have was, do you have any upcoming projects that you could talk about, or that you would, projects that are out there that you would have loved to have been part of?
Oh, there's plenty of stuff that I would love to have been part of. I mean, I'm a Marvel zombie from, all I read was Marvel comics when I was a kid. Spider-Man was my first, The Avengers was my first comic, but Spider-Man was the first comic that I fell in love with. And I've drawn a bit of Spidey over the years, but I'd like to do another bit of Spider-Man, because I don't think I ever did him well enough. I look back at all the work I did for Marvel, really, back in when I did do a little chunk. I did Hulk Smash and Spider-Man Tangled Web and things like that, and I kind of don't think I did my best, and I could do it better now. So I would like, and I love all the Marvel characters up to about 1980, when things like Speedball started. I even like Speedball. Jesus wept. But but I'm not really interested in Gambit or any of the Rob characters, particularly, though I've drawn Deadpool, and I kind of like Deadpool actually. So I don't know. So but I would kill to draw pretty much like Legion of Monsters. I love the Marvel horror books, and I'd love to draw Werewolf by Night and Man-Thing and all those sort of crazy Marvel characters, Dracula, etc. But no, do Marvel have Dracula anymore? They still do?
Oh, they don't anymore.
Not anymore.
I think he's kind of. Yes, he was. Yeah,
all
I
right,
think he's kind
because
of
he's public domain,
public
isn't he?
domain
Yeah,
now.
so Marvel can do him whatever they want.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. And Doctor Strange, Iron Fist. I love Iron Fist. I'd love to draw Iron Fist. I think I'd do a pretty good Daredevil too. I mean, I drew Daredevil in my Punisher run that I did with Garth, but I didn't enjoy that run at all, because Garth doesn't like superheroes, so he just pissed all over the superheroes. I mean, they were just ridiculous parodies of themselves. Wolverine's this moron, and Spidey's hardly much better. And there was a sequence, for instance, in that Punisher storyline I did, where Spider-Man is swinging into a building, and the Punishers put claymores on the floor, so that when Spidey lands on a claymore, he can't take his foot off, he's screwed. And I said to Garth, I was with him down in London, and I said to him, but Spider-Man's got spider sense. If the claymores weren't live, by the way, so he wasn't going to get his leg blown off, but apparently Spidey didn't know that. But I said to Garth, he's got spider sense, so if there's danger, he will swing in, he will sense danger, and he will avoid it. However, because the claymores aren't live, there will be no danger, so he will know these Claymores aren't live, so it's not a problem for him. And Garth went, who cares? And just kept drinking. And as far as I could tell, so did the editors at Marvel. They just sort of went, yeah, whatever, it's Garth. Just let him get on with it. And I was like, and it pissed me off, and I kind of just didn't put my heart and soul into it. So I feel like I'd like to do a lot of stuff for Marvel. And I've done a bunch of covers for them just recently. I did an issue of X-Men 11, I think. I did a Wolverine story in that, and I really enjoyed that. And it was really, working on I was an X fan. Everybody read Byrne and Claremont's X-Men back in the day. That's just, it was a guaranteed. If you get into comics, you read that. And I love Byrne's artwork. I still love his work, even though I know he's a complete douche. I've met him twice, and both times I've wanted to strangle him. So, which is depressing. When you meet your heroes and they're idiots like that, it's just depressing. So, I was very pleased to scratch my X-Men itch and get to do an issue of the X-Men. That was like a real thing for me. So, I've done some. I did a Punisher cover for them and a Star Wars cover just recently that I don't know if any of them are out yet. And what else have I done? Does anybody remember this magazine called Crazy that Marvel published back in the... Yeah. There you go. They're doing a Crazy one-shot, and I just did a cover for the Crazy one-shot, which was weird and kind of wonderful because I kind of liked Crazy. So when I was Obnoxio the Clown and all that. Yeah, so I got to draw Obnoxio just for one issue, just one-shot thing, and I look at it and go, this isn't going to sell at all. It's just not going to sell at all, but whatever.
To keep the trademark.
I guess you're probably right. That'll be it. Yeah.
You had a couple of pages in the Guardians annual, didn't you?
That's right. 3 pages of Guardians. Which was, and I am doing a 5-issue Yondu miniseries for them. So starting at some point or other.
I always like asking artists this question. Mm-hmm. So David Lloyd, who did V for Vendetta, used to get these crazy 3-page long narratives that artistically made no sense. Like V for Vendetta, I want his face looking with a bemused look, and he's got a glint in his eye. He's wearing a mask where you cannot see this. And so David Lloyd used to rant.
Dave likes ranting. Yeah, and so I love Dave, but he's a ranter.
Nuts that he's like, you wrote me a 3-page long letter to change this artistic style. So I'm just wondering if you've ever had demands on where you've got, like Deadpool is a good example, where you've got a guy in a mask.
Yeah.
Well, how can I make him smirk? Like with
Deadpool,
sadly,
you can.
They
You can because you put that little thing on his face, the little edge of the smirk, and you can play with stuff if it's cartoony enough, like with Spider-Man. You can show emotion with his eyes. You move the eyes about and make them squish and things. And that's why I loved that Spider-Man when he appeared in the MCU finally, and they made his eyes move. And I was just like, it's so great, and it makes total sense too, kind of, because the eyes adjusting to the light or what have you. It was brilliant. I loved the way they did that. But you do get stuff like that where a writer will say, panel 1, our hero gets out of the car, walks up the path, knocks on the door, and then the door is opened for him. And you go, that's 5 panels. Okay, gets out of the car, panel 1, walks up the path, panel 2, knocks on the door, panel 3, door is open, panel 4, goes in, panel 5. You can't, either just he's at the door, you can do it, I suppose, by implication, where you shoot from behind the door, and the door is being opened, and you see the person who's opening it, and then our figure is behind that, and then you see the path, and you show his car parked. But so by implication, his car is there, so he's walked up the path, and he's knocked on the door, and the door is being opened for him. So you can imply it, but to show it physically, that's 5 panels. So stuff like that always, all artists have had that at some point, and it's often when they're dealing with writers who are just starting out, and you get a lot of writers nowadays who come in from other mediums like books, or they've worked from TV or what have you, and they don't understand quite how comics work, and it takes a while for them to adjust to the way the structure of comics works, and they do things like that. New artists or writers or writers who have come in from different areas like novels or film or what have you, and you get that sort of thing happening, and you just have to roll with it because I haven't there's no room for prima donnas really, especially not anymore. I mean, maybe back in the 80s you could get your prima donna types who would, and Dave Lloyd, who would rant and rave. I mean, Dave doesn't have to worry. Dave's rich. He's done fine out of V for Vendetta. He's got a lot of dough. So Dave can, every time I see Dave, he sort of rolls in a suit, and he's got a fabulous tan. And I go, just back from Italy, are you, Dave? And he's like, yeah, I had a lovely time, John. And he cracks open a bottle of Red. And I'm like, it's 10 in the morning, Dave, and you're starting on the Red. And he's like, you want one? And I'm like, it's 10 in the morning, Dave. it's not time for the Red yet. No, good Lord. Yeah, but he's Dave's a hoot. He is brilliant. Yeah. And he loves the medium. He loves comics, and that's why he rants. Because, but every comic artist has had a bit of that at some point.
When I saw I wasn't there myself, but I was watching the live stream of it. Just him going on for 30 minutes about how one of these days if Alan Moore dies suddenly due to nefarious circumstances, it'll be due to him.
It'll be
because he couldn't take and he would show, and he actually had one somewhere, and he keeps it on the logistics of it. He's like, and he goes, this was one panel, and a guy in a mask on a rooftop, and I believe it was shot from behind his head, so you wouldn't even see his face. It was ridiculous.
Yeah, well, that is Alan Moore. I mean, he's famous for that.
Yeah.
I think it was either Dave Gibbo or Gary Leach. I can't remember which one of the two I was talking to, and he said, when I would get a Moore script, you would just go through it with a highlighter, and you just go, important bit, read, important bit, read, important bit, and then you would just highlight the bits that actually you had to read and use for the story, and the rest of it was kind of window dressing. Fabulously written window dressing, where he would talk about scene 1, a park, a fellow lies on a bench, comatose. The sunlight it's mid-afternoon. The sunlight is streaming through. Dust motes are dancing within the sun, and and you just be like, I'm not going to be drawing these dust motes. I don't think so. Don't think I'll be drawing those. No. So Alan's he's well known for that sort of prose. And if you're working with Alan Moore, you're like, yay, I'm working with Alan Moore. So you don't really worry about. I've never worked with Alan Moore, but we would all like to.
Do you prefer more detail or less detail from the writer?
For the writer, if the writer has something specific that they want, then I want them to tell me. The worst thing that can happen is when they don't tell you, and then you draw something and they go, well, what I wanted was, and now I've got to go back and change it. So I want to know if there's something specific, but the best scripts are the John Wagner approach to scripting. John Wagner's the guy who created Judge Dredd, and he's famous for his extremely terse scripts. Example being, panel 1, Dredd on bike, and that's it. That's his description of the panel, Dredd on bike, and that's all you need. Because you've got Dredd, you've got his bike, and he's going to be in Mega City, so it's Dredd on bike, and that's what you need. So for an artist, that's really what you want, because we're the directors, we're the people sort of lighting it and choreographing it and staging it and picking the camera angles and whatnot. So all we need is to know our actors, who they are, and their motivation, and that's pretty much it, and the rest can be left up to us. And some writers do that and some don't. But I've always had no problems with any of the writing, the scripts I've had come through. Sometimes they're a bit wordy, but hey, that's fine too. But I'd prefer it if they were tertiary, because it takes less time to get down to work then.
Do you find it difficult when you pick up artwork from a writer that someone else has already started? That you're trying to match kind of how they made the characters look. And you don't get to do it your way, really.
Well, yeah, but that's fairly standard, because if you work for Marvel, you're dealing with characters who've been around for 40 years, and you've got to. You can either go for a look that's a bit like your favorite version of that character, or you can just I'll just go completely me. And it's a decision again that you make stylistically, what you want. out of the thing. I mean, when I took over from Derek on The Boys, again, you because that's a self-contained thing, beginning, middle, and end. I think you've got a certain amount of you've got to try to keep stylistically as close-ish to it as possible, so that it's not a jarring thing. Everybody expects Spider-Man artists to change every while. That's fine. You know, that's just what it is. But for something that's but for something that's a complete overarching story, you want to have as much of a consistency throughout the whole thing as possible. So you do try to be true to what the previous artist was maybe doing, and obviously you've got to try and keep the characters looking as much like the characters as, you know, and you know, it's not really your place to come in and start going, well, I'm going to draw Butcher different. I'm going to put him in a pink suit. You know, it's not. You know, you gotta stick with what you're given. You know.
So in that case, then where would you be able to put your flair?
Well, I mean, if you're doing your own character, like Hitman was mine, and so I created him, and so I was able to bring what I wanted to that, which was more of a humorous. You know, it could go goofy, and it could be extremely serious, and so that let me play. And again, if you're doing a Marvel or a DC character, you get to put your own stamp on it if you want to, and and that's fun. Sometimes, like for instance, the Demon. When Garth and I did the Demon, I mean, I honestly, I'd never seen Jack Kirby's interpretation of the Demon. When I started it, the only Demon stuff I'd seen was the previous artist, who was
that Matt Wagner?
No, we took over with issue 40 or 41, and it had been Alan Grant was right. Val Zemeckis.
Yes,
Val Zemeckis was the artist before me, and I just thought, and he drew the Demon in quite a Kirby sort of style, but he made him look a little bit too teddy bearish for my liking. He didn't really look particularly demonic to me, and I just went, I'm going to go completely my own way with this, and I'm just going to make him as demonic as I possibly can. And as it went on, he became more and more. I started off drawing him, and he had regular elbows, and then after about 5 issues, big spikes started coming out of his elbows, and you know, and I just lengthened the spikes on his belt and twisted his face more and made his fins just get worse, more and more and more. I was just like, exaggerate, more demonic, and it worked for me, and it was fun, but it was completely different to what Kirby's version of it was. And I went back and looked at Kirby stuff later. So I'm a huge Kirby fan. I just somehow missed the Demon. I don't know why, but I went back and looked at his stuff, and I went, yeah, this is great. But I'm glad I kind of went off my own tangent. I mean, if I'd seen the Kirby stuff, because I love Kirby so much, I think I might have kept a bit more to Kirby, but I'm glad in a way I didn't, because I just, it was my stamp on it, I suppose. Yeah. So stuff like that, yeah, you get to play when the opportunity is right. If that answers.
How did you guys end up doing Hitman? With Garth hating superheroes.
Well, so that he could shoot them.
Fair enough. I was going to say, I mean, there's a lot of guest stars through that book. So.
Yeah, well, I mean, Hitman came about because DC wanted more IP. That's the honest truth of it. They created a Bloodlines, the big Bloodlines annual crossover, so that everybody would produce another superhero, and they'd have 30 new superheroes, and they'd have 30 new IP that they could go and exploit. Unfortunately, none of them were any good, but hey, so you know,
they've killed most of them at this point.
Yeah. Well, Tommy killed some of them too. Yeah. I said to Garth, Gunfire had come out. Now, as much as I think it's created by Marv Wolfman, isn't it?
I think so. Yeah.
And as much as I think Marv Wolfman is a great write-writer, and I love Dracula. Marv Wolfman and Gene Colan and Tom Palmer and Dracula, it's so fucking great. Pardon my French. But yes, my Irish. I don't know. Fucking great. Yeah, sorry. The Gunfire was one of the worst characters I'd ever seen. Terrible costume, rotten powers, stupidest friggin' thing ever. And I said to Garth when we started Hitman, and it got cancelled by about issue 10 or 9 or something like that. It lasted that many issues. I said to Garth, if Hitman doesn't last longer than Gunfire, I'm going to quit comics, because, you know, if we can't make a comic that's better than that sells better than that, we're doomed. We're bloody doomed. And as it is, we lasted longer, so that was a relief. But I also told Garth when we did issue 1 million, I said to Garth, can we put Gunfire into issue 1 million and kill him? And Garth was like, oh yeah. So we blew him up. So, you know, that was nice, you know. Bloodlines, for what it was just not good.
Yeah, it was terrible.
Yeah, that's the word I was groping for.
It was terrible.
Yeah. That's it.
And Marvel did it shortly after that.
Well, you know,
I always remember, because the one that always stands out for me was the Captain America annual, because it was like the battling, I don't even remember his name, but he had boxing gloves on.
That's a good look. It's a good look for a superhero.
All right.
Yeah, was he a kangaroo or something?
No.
You know, that'd be the only way you'd make that work as a superhero, make him a kangaroo with boxing gloves.
Yeah.
And then it might
Same
be
concept,
vaguely
though.
entertaining then.
Yeah.
But no, that sounds terrible. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, well. You know. Yeah. You know, if you're creating characters solely because you want to create some new IP, you're not going to get anything good, really. It's a miracle if anything good comes out of it, because people aren't doing it because they want to. They're doing it because it's their job that they've been given, and you're not really going to get anybody who's passionate about it. They're investing. They're just being a guy, I got to create a new character for this. Argus, I guess, which sounds like Argus was like the Flash character.
Yeah, he came out of the Flash. I think he was blind.
That's a new one in the superhero world.
Kind of go into stealth.
Yeah. And he was created by Phil Hester. Yeah. And Phil's a genius. I love Phil, but Argus is my little poo. So, you know, it's and that's because Phil was given a thing to do, and it was like there was no love behind it. There was no reason. It was just I have to create a new character. You know, Phil creates tons of characters all the time, and they're fantastic. Yeah. But when he has to, you know, shoehorn some stupid new character in, it's not going to be great. Yeah. We were lucky that Hitman was like, but that was mainly, you know, because Garth basically said, and he did that all the time with Hitman. He said basically we're going to ignore what they want and just do our own thing. And every time there was a crossover, like we had to do what was that crossover, Blackest Night or something.
Blackest Night was when all the
lights went out, and they were I don't know, because we ignored it completely, because it was meant to cross over and be final night. That's it. And we just had them in the bar chatting. You know, it's like, oh shit, the sky's gone out, close the doors, have a drink. And that's what the story was, tell some stories. And you just ignore the crossover thing completely. 1 Million did exactly the same thing. It was just had nothing to do with the story of 1 million at all. We just ignored it, except by having 1 million written on the cover.
And killed Gunfire.
And killing Gunfire. Something good came out of it. Something good came out of it. No more Gunfire. Well, Gunfire 1 million. We killed Gunfire 1 million.
Yeah.
Because of course.
We've only got about 5 minutes before the next group comes in, so let's go with one more.
You talked about starting off painting, and then you started going to ink. Have you started going into the new technology with?
No, you have to survive. Now you have to, at the very minimum, you have to have a scanner and scan your work and email it in. So I do have that, and I have Photoshop, and I can tweak my stuff a little bit but I don't draw with a pen digitally. I don't like it. Okay. It never feels real to me. I like pen, paper, the feel of the pen on the paper, the texture. It's not there. And I know they've got it to the point now where you can apply pressure with the pen on the tablet, and it replicates, sort of thickens and thins lines and all this sort of business, but it still doesn't feel real to me. Plus, also, you don't have any original artwork afterwards, and so you lose a revenue stream looking at it in a completely, monetary point of view. So I don't see the point of that. People say it's quicker, but I wonder if that's true.
I can tell you, I did Dan Parent's panel a couple of hours ago, and he said it's slower for him.
Yeah.
He's like, I can do it faster myself.
Yeah. So I yeah, I doubt it if it was the case. And I'd rather work in pen and ink. And I'm a moron when it comes to computers. And within Photoshop, I have my little things that I understand, like the transform tool and stuff like that. But as soon as anything goes slightly wrong and I'm outside of my little window of knowledge, I'm screwed. And I'm on the phone to my mate who's clever, and I'm going, help, I don't know what's going on, can't work Photoshop. And he has to walk me through it till I get back to the bit where I do understand again. So, which is weird because both my brothers are computer geniuses, and I'm a computer moron. But hey.
Picked art.
Yeah, I did.
Picked science.
Yeah. They picked the. I laughed at them when I was a kid, and I said, computers, what's that? That's never catch on. Comics is where it's at. Once again, my Nostradamus-like abilities failed me.
Does anybody ask for their autograph?
Yeah, their autograph?
Yeah.
I was my middle brother is a lead programmer for computer games, and he was the lead programmer on 2 of the most successful computer games. He worked on Arkham Asylum and stuff like as well. But there's a game he worked on, and I never remember the name of it because I have no interest in computer games, which is terrible, isn't it? Because it was my brother, and I should know. But I occasionally remember, and I was walking down the street with Duncan Fegredo, clang, one time, and I was just chatting about what my brother did, and I knew that Duncan's an obsessive game player, and Duncan said, well, what games did he write? And I said, work on. I said, this one? And Duncan went, that's my favourite game ever, can I have his autograph? So yeah. Yeah, that was nice.
All right, we'll wrap it up because, like I said, there's
Bigging up
probably
my
somebody waiting out there.
Yeah. Okay,
Thanks,
cheers
guys.
guys. Thank you very much for appearing and making an appearance. And
Yeah, appreciate it.